Chapter 19. Cousin Tan locked himself up in the attic on the day the results of the examinations came out. The pressure was so great that he hadn't eaten for days, and he had been suffering a mild depression since taking the test. He had tried alcohol. It didn't help. Then he had slept and slept, with the team leader laughing outside his window, calling him crazy. We were all worried. Then one day, Tan had emerged suddenly, throwing himself into farm work. He kept silent about the test and shut his mouth whenever anyone talked about college. He was an angry mute, immersed in his own world. He had lost weight and looked 40, even though he was only in his 30s. His excellent scores sent shockwaves through Yellowstone. Tan cried as the results were slipped under the door of his hideout. He at first refused to open the envelope. When he eventually did, he let out a piercing scream and danced downstairs to meet his beaming family. He was the sort of guy born for college life. Nerdy, wearing thick glasses, he read everything, including the microscopic directions on the backs of chemical fertilizer bags. He wrote poetry and dabbled in fiction in his spare time. He was dreamy and romantic, way beyond the marrying age. He had refused many matchmaking sessions with sorry-looking countryside girl. His vision of a wife existed only in books. Considering he came from the landlord's family with no prospects whatsoever, he was lucky anyone would even consider him. The situation didn't trouble him a bit. He had made peace with himself. Why bother with marriage? Wait until you can afford it, he used to say, which frustrated the heck out of his uncle, who believed that by now he should have been surrounded by mischievous grandkids. 2 days after the results came out, Tan fell into another bout of depression. He said the high scores would only worsen his disappointment in the end. The scores were nothing but a cover-up. One's political background would take precedence. Such a drop from a staggering height would crush his soul. There were again rumors that candidates from the wrong families, despite high scores, would be placed at the end of the admission line. When all the slots were filled, they would be left holding an empty bag. Just another way of finishing off the wrong families. Tan retreated into his attic and stared out the window all day long. At the end of summer, Tan became the first college student in Yellowstone after the Cultural Revolution. Amoy University, finance major. When the certified admission letter arrived bearing his name, the whole town was stunned. Amoy University, located on the beautiful subtropical island of Amoy, was the best in Fijian. It trained the cadets for the province. It was an old boys' club. Tan would fit in beautifully. This time the whole family was teary-eyed. Many years of suffering had suddenly come to an end. The sun had risen, and that night the stars would shine. Tan was now the happiest of men, giving flying horses away as if he were getting married. I eyed his slightly bent back and tired eyes. It wouldn't surprise me if some professors were younger than he. Maybe he, too, would become a professor and marry one of his female students. I was so happy for him. From that point on, his fate changed dramatically. Tan received 3 wedding proposals in the next 3 days from the most eligible girls in town. They came from good families and had solid bodies that could plow the fields like oxen. Their families even agreed to forego the standard marriage fees. One of the fathers promised to throw in 2 farming cows as part of the dowry. Not a bad deal, we joked. Cousin Tan laughed at them all and rejected their offers. He was our hope. We celebrated him at a big banquet before he left. He encouraged my brother to take the plunge and cautioned me to concentrate on my major, make a reasonable study schedule, and persevere. That night, I sat in my room facing a tall stack of books. I assigned a time slot for each subject in order to cram everything into a single day, every day. I had to get up at 5 and go to bed at 10:30, allowing only short breaks for lunch and dinner. No entertainment, no goofing off with friends, no daydreaming, only hardcore studying. My heart beat with the excitement of the challenge. I couldn't close my eyes. I tried to imagine what a college classroom looked like, occupied by sharp professors and leggy city girls wearing sexy skirts. The stars blinked from a clear sky, and the moon shone through my window. I made my mind. College was the only thing for me. I'd get out of this small-town hellhole. If Tan could swing it, so could I. Beijing. The word split into 4 parts that split again. winking at me like stars as I fell asleep. Suddenly, school had a purpose. College was the goal, and ancient teachers like Mr. Dew and the Peking man paraded the street of Yellowstone, attracting many admiring looks and greetings. Only a few years before, shamed, they had walked the same street wearing tall hats with thick plaques hung around their necks, on which their names were smugly written in red ink. Their heads had been shaved and their hands tied behind their backs. Kids had thrown bricks at them and adults had spat in their faces. They were stinking intellectuals. Society had no place for them then. Mr. Dew's former wife, who had left him a few years before, now begged to come back to him. Dew didn't want her. He married a young teacher who fell under the magic spell of his mighty mathematical talents. Genius and youthful beauty, the people of Yellowstone could live with that. There were serious debates as to whether he would live longer or die sooner, given his new energy-consuming marriage. Different schools of thought came to different conclusions. In the end, he was the superstar teacher who had guessed correctly the answers on two big questions that had been on the national mathematics exam. He deserved to enjoy his new wife. The Peking man didn't have any problems with his Peking woman, but luck also came his way. He was honored with Communist Party membership. He called himself a fossil newly unearthed by the party. It was a mixed blessing he had difficulty accepting or rejecting. A cynical historian, he had his doubts about the party, but he also knew enough not to refuse such an offer. The Cultural Revolution could come back any time, and then he, the Peking man, would be the one who had rejected party membership, thereby rejecting the party itself, maybe even rejecting the country. Then he would have to change his nationality, or they might lock him away in some cage, like they had the real Peking man. They said he shed tears at the swearing ceremony. Many suspected they were tears of pain and suffering, not joy. Poor guy. As for my goldfish-eyed, wheezing English teacher, he retired after his wife became bedridden and incontinent. With him gone, the school didn't lose much. I could attest to that. The finals for the fall semester loomed before us, and hard-working students were found lurking behind closed doors, hitting the books late into the night, and the students who boarded at school clutched their books and went off to find a quiet spot in which to study. The school announced that teachers would use the results of the fall semester finals to help determine which majors the graduating students should concentrate on. I abandoned the leaking compartments of my ship, the science courses, and steered the good parts along the misty coast. The teachers noticed I'd stopped going to science classes, but didn't express concern. I stopped going to Professor Wee's for 2 weeks and reviewed the subjects within the liberal arts field. I was up at 5 in the morning, taking my hurting body to bed at 11. Teachers held review sessions for every subject. I skipped all the sessions, sequestering myself in my private spot in the wheat field outside the school's low wall, where I banged away at my books on my own. The finals for the fall semester took 3 full days. At each test, I swaggered into the classroom empty-handed and chose a seat apart from everyone else. It was just me and the paper. I wanted the teachers to know that there was no possibility of cheating for this born-again student. My message was loud and clear. The teachers looked at me suspiciously. I scribbled quickly and answered all the questions in my best handwriting. Good presentation counted for 1/3 of your score, Dad had cautioned me. I did the best I could. This was a defining moment. I was declaring my intention to join the race for college, and if anyone had any problems with it, I couldn't care less. I had been at the bottom before, crawling on my knees. Now I was limping along. Soon I would be running. I wanted the world to know that I wasn't born in order for someone to step on me. I handed in the papers early. The teachers kept calm, their curiosity at bay, pretending not to look at me. As I left each classroom, I could feel their hands grabbing my papers and checking the answers. I knew they would be shaking their heads in amazement. The results of the finals were significant because the college entrance examinations were only 7 months away. If you didn't make this one, you might as well go home, sharpen the farm tools, and register as a proud farmer for life, just in time for spring harvest. I sweated through the semester finals, and the results blew me away. On the public announcement wall on campus, my name hovered at the top in every liberal arts subject. My proudest achievement was English. I scored 91%, putting me head-to-head with a guy they called the English wizard, Xing, an apple-headed rival of mine since first grade. Silently, I thanked Professor Wee, my secret weapon. Dia was busy trumpeting my victory like a pimp. He hung around the wall, smoking his thick one, shouting to anybody passing to look at the results, particularly mine. When the head came by, Dia showed him my glories. The snobby science major sneered and told Dia that no one in the history of this lowly high school would ever dared of majoring in English. It was a major for the privileged city boys, not farm boys like us, who smelled like manure. It was an elegant major for high-class people. It had to do with the mysterious Western culture and capitalism. It had to do with America. The head knew how to hurt a fragile soul. Dia spat at his feet, cursed like a sailor, and walked back to me like a loser. Is that true, that no one in our school has ever made it as an English major? It's true. Why? I asked. You gotta make me proud. I was out there happy for you, and the head trashed me left and right. Now I'm totally busted up inside. Let me ask you, was there anyone in the history of this lowly school who ever played the violin before? He blinked and cocked his head for a second before shaking it slowly. A broad grin spread across his sad face. Right, you're the first one. He straightened up and hugged me violently. You could do it, man, Dia spat out excitedly, and you got to do it for me and the school. Then, when you pack up and take the fabulous Fujian-Beijing train, I'll load a shotgun and shoot the head right on his shining skull. Mr. Cobb, my new English teacher, was a dark-skinned young man with a head of feathery curls. He summoned me into his office. Congratulations, he said. You finally woke up. He jerked his head violently. His curls were bothering him. I heard mixed things about you from some people, but it doesn't matter what they said anymore, he continued. I like what I see now. You have potential. A brilliant opening line. He made a friend of me on the spot. It was us against them now. We have work to do to get you where you want to go. He was good with abstract terms. I'll give you what I have and help you with what you need. Do you know what I mean? I was clueless. I shifted in my seat, nodding ambiguously. First thing to push for is membership in the Young Communist League. I checked your record, and it's pathetic. You weren't even a little red guard in elementary school. Not the memory of my miserable elementary school again. Someone wronged you badly. He narrowed his eyes and looked out the window. You bet it was wrong. It was criminal. I was the only one in the whole school who wasn't a little red guard because I was from a black family and was personally on the suspect list as a counter-revolutionary. I still had nightmares about it. It's time someone stood up for you. I'll get you the membership before you graduate. It'll enhance your chance of admission into a top-notch college like the one I went to. You don't want to be second-guessed on such a minor point, do you? No, sir, and thank you, sir. No problem. I had the same conversation with Xing, another talented potential. You two are my only hopes for the year. I'll personally involve myself with your growth. Together, we'll give it our best try. It brought to mind the pep talks from my ping pong coach. The pep talks meant nothing, but they made you feel rather good. A sort of national anthem in words. Within days, a small red poster was pasted on the school wall. It attracted almost no attention. It stated that I was belatedly being given the glorious title of Little Red Guard and had been admitted into the Young Communist League. For a brief moment, I felt like the Peking man, tickled by the emptiness of such a title. Communism had become a commodity with a price tag. Its value plummeted a notch each time it was sold at a garage sale. Soon the membership would become a tradable commodity, one you could pick up for a penny with a cold drink thrown in. I went to Mr. Ka's office to thank him. He slapped my shoulder and grabbed me with his strong hands. "Congratulations, young comrade. You are the future of communism." He spoiled the serious words by winking at me. Professor Wee did the soprano thing when I told her the results. Her hands cupped beneath her chin and her silver head tilted to one side. She shook her head, speechless. She was in heaven. Her happiness for me was genuine. God bless her. The school authorities regrouped the entire graduating class, which accounted for just over 500 students. They were now formed into 6 science and 2 liberal arts classes. S1, which was Science 1, was commonly called, consisted of the best science students and was where the head and other snobs were. The school placed the best of its faculty in that class. The rest of the science classes were left to rot. Students held strikes against the school and threw rocks at S1, and some snobs were even beaten for showing off their exclusivity. But the separation stayed. L1, or Liberal Arts 1, also got the best Yellowstone High had, which included the venerable Peking man and an assortment of liberal arts buffs. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. Apple-headed Xing took the back seat on the right. I took the one on the left. Poor Dia was regrouped into L2, where he claimed to sleep through most of the morning without being disturbed by the teachers. They didn't care. Students smoked in class and propped their feet on the desk. Teachers found warm and sunny spots and read novels. Cousin Tan returned home for a visit. His hair was longer and he was wearing good shoes that would have been shiny if he'd bothered to polish them. His sunken cheeks had filled out and he sported a few ballpoint pens lined up evenly in his jacket pocket. He crossed his legs, tapping his right foot languidly, his speech coming easily, filled with college jargon. He was on his spring break with not a burden in the world. He sat in our living room surrounded by my whole family. It's all good meat they served there at AU. That stood for Amoy University. Even for breakfast, I asked. He nodded. Pickled meat. What a luxury. I had never heard of such a thing, but I believed him. My mouth and I had to swallow a few times as the delicious thought of meat steaming on my plate. My lofty goal of going to college vanished and my desires became very basic. My whole body yearned for meat. Simmered, roasted, sautéed, boiled, fried, smoked, or pickled. What difference did it make? The bloody flesh tasted good, whatever you did to it. We spent a whole long month on MT, he said casually. The whole family shrugged. MT? What was that? Meat truck, questioned the military training that is for all AU students. Cousin Tan explained, "Look at my hands." He stretched out his hands before us to see. "They're all calloused now. See how hard the rifles have made them." It wasn't AU or MT that made his hands rough, I thought. It was FW, farm work. "I heard you were preparing for an English major," he said, fingering a callus on his right hand. "Yeah, what do you think?" Mom had urged me to seek his advice. Now I was all ears. How should I say it? He recrossed his legs and leaned back. "I've met some English majors at AU. They were all rich kids from the large city of Fuzhou and, of course, Amoy. You know, the kind that wear expensive clothes and watches, ride fancy bikes, and have lots of spending money. They're artistic and romantic." His eyes, as if he were staring at a mirage, close but untouchable. There was one pretty slender girl, jeans and all, who was so talented she could speak English more fluently than some of the teachers there. She was from HK, Hong Kong. I wouldn't try for English. You have all the disadvantages. Those guys all have big foreign tape recorders complete with American language tapes. Have you seen a recorder before? He shook his head. Of course not. I still didn't believe it was humanly possible to preserve the sound of a human voice once it had spoken. It was like trying to gather water once it had spilled. Those guys have beautiful, perfect accents. It's talent. You have to be artistic and musical. I don't think anyone at YSH, Yellowstone High, could teach you that, and even if they could, we would be stuck given our thick lips and slow tongues. If I were you, I would consider something else, maybe agriculture management. I saw my dad lose interest in talking to this new city man. He rolled a thick one and offered it to my cousin. I knew Dad was being funny. He should know that they wouldn't do thick ones on the AU campus. Cousin Tan refused it, pulled out a wing cigarette, and offered one to Dad and my brother. What is it? Dad asked. Oh, it's the most popular brand on campus. Even the chairman of my department at AU smokes these. Dad shook his head violently from side to side like a Yellowstone farmer. Not my type. It's too light. It'll make me sneeze. He broke the cigarette in half and dropped it on the floor. Why don't you stay for lunch? Dad's way of saying goodbye. Mom frowned warningly at him. No, I have to go to Poutine to see some AU classmates, Sure, we knew. Socializing. It was a part of high society. We had no meat for lunch in any case. We watched him comb his longish hair with his hands and walk with a straight back down the narrow street of Yellowstone, greeting people with a wave of his hands like a victorious Napoleon. I retreated to my room after he had left, taking 2 hours to rebuild the spirit he had so gently and carelessly dashed. But no matter how tacky he had become, I still liked it better than seeing him locked up in this attic. He had the freedom to vent his airs now. He was what it was all about. I renewed my determination, wanting to be in his shoes, if not necessarily like him. Do you still want to pursue the English major? Dad asked me later. Yes, even more so. Why? Because I think they've got a bunch of losers and playboys at AU. I'm not afraid of city folks. They're wimpy. I'm tough. They already have everything without college. I don't. I'll work my butt off and beat every one of those pompous, spoiled brats. Don't you think I can do it? Dad smiled and nodded confidently. He blew a perfect smoke ring. I caught it with my index finger, cutting it in half.